Hi, I'm Sasha Samochina. My big bad JPL title is Software Systems Engineer, but I go by Immersive Visualization Producer. I'm also a project lead. So I'm going to be kind of explaining what all of that means and how I combined the idea of studying art into a career in science, specifically at NASA, specifically at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So we're going to go on a little bit of a journey through me, and then a little history lesson on JPL, and then I'll talk about some immersive projects that I work on. So, how do you combine art and science? And quite frankly, this is how I felt a lot of my life. I'm the shrug emoji. That's me. So growing up, I always didn't know which box I fit in. So here's a picture of me when I was little, crushed velvet dress, and playing a computer game. You have to dress up when you play computer games when you're me. So I always tried to combine these different things. I'm a musician, I made art, I also loved computers and technology, and I was always big in science. So for me, and I can't get into it because this talk is so short, but I found kind of the media world in college a place where I could do both computer programming and still make conceptual art and have them join together. So after living in Chicago and New York and working at the Field Museum and then in New York doing web design and development, I moved to California and started working for NASA. So I've been there for 4 years. If you don't know, this is called the meatball logo. So if you learn something today, you can call it the meatball, because it is. The other one's called the worm. The one that's red, that's the worm. So if you don't know how NASA functions, we're basically an agency that has 10 centers scattered all across the United States. And I work at this one. Here it is in all its glory. It's nestled in the San Gabriel Mountains in Pasadena, California. And it's actually the first NASA center, so it actually predates NASA. It started in 1936, and NASA became an agency in 1958. So they were the crazy people that started trying to mess around with rockets and shoot things into space. And I'm going to show you my favorite image from that time and explain why I work there. Guess which one is the JPLer? Is it the hungover-looking one in the center, not wearing a shirt? That would be the correct answer. So in the early years of JPL in the 30s, JPL was first sponsored by the US Army to develop rocket technology for the corporate and sergeant missile systems. And this photo is of one of the tests that they were doing for the missiles in the Arroyo, where my work is now. So the guys in military garb are obviously the US Army, and the guy in the center is looking not at the same direction that they're all looking at. And that is because the US military people are looking at where the rocket is taking off, but the JPLer is looking at where he thinks it will land. So this, in a nutshell, kind of is how I feel about working where I work. And one of my first biggest love stories is with the Mars Science Laboratory mission, which is so nicely called the Curiosity rover. And how many people are aware of this mission? Okay, so I don't need to go through it. If you don't know, you should read up on it. I don't have time. I could do a full talk on Curiosity alone. But this mission, in a nutshell, is amazing because it was supposed to be a 90-day mission, and it's lasted for 7 years now. It's coming on 7 years this August. So that's quite a feat. And the combination of this wonderful rover, as well as the NASA charter, I know, you guys, it's so exciting. So part of the NASA charter says that we have to use the widest dissemination of, or disseminate information to the widest amount of people that we possibly can. So my first job at JPL was actually in communications, and I became fascinated with how to do that the most creatively. So it was really telling the public things so that they would care, not so they would click, so they would want to read more, maybe on their own, but so that they would be engaged. And I kind of fell into a lucky thing where this panorama was getting put together in February of 2016. And this looks like a melty thing unless you work in immersive media, and then you kind of know what it is. It's a panoramic image. But we don't usually take images of both the rover herself and the surrounding land around her, because it takes a lot of data. Data passes through the deep space network. It just takes a lot of time. So we were lucky, and I was lucky enough to kind of know that YouTube was coming out with an API for 360 video to be already inherently imbued in the program. So I took a bunch of time and smashed our panorama into their API and made the first 360 for NASA. So the agency had never publicly released something like this. And the public engagement was incredible. Like, they could see where Curiosity was, how tall the dune was, and they could also kind of ask questions about immersive media in general, like, do I spin my phone around? What am I doing? So we were kind of, for the first time, kind of working at the rate of technology, because it was something that was already publicly available to everyone. And it was super amazing to be part of this, and I became a little bit obsessed. So I started making 360s and producing them with scientists and engineers at JPL specifically, and kind of stopped doing anything else. One more highlight I'll show you is for the Juno mission to Jupiter. We had the orbital insertion into Jupiter's atmosphere on July 4th, 2016. NASA loves those American holidays. You know, we got to do it on July 4th. I don't know how they always plan it. It's like, how? They're smart. Orbital trajectories, people are insane. So Jupiter, as you know, is like the Mordor of planets. It's super scary. Maybe you don't know. But if Mordor was a planet, it would be Jupiter. So this was a huge feat, and I was like, okay, so let's see what the visuals would be like using actual data that we have now from the Galileo mission of what Jupiter looks like, and put people next to Juno flying into the orbit. But that wasn't all. We also went inside the spacecraft in a 3D CAD model. And inside the spacecraft, you can see there's 3 little figures on the bottom there. These are GIFs. I'm sorry, but it's too hard to pan around a 360 while talking. So those are 3 little Lego minifigures that were actually flying along with Juno. So it wasn't just a robotic mission. It did have passengers, and it even gets cuter. The Lego minifigures are Galileo, Juno, and Jupiter. So really doing a little nod of the hat to the history of Jupiter and the history of Greek mythology, really. So this was a really good way to kind of engage the public and get them very stoked. And if you are a content creator or if you're a teacher, if you go to this link, you will find all of the 360s that all of the agencies have made for NASA and be able to download them. I warn you, the website is not beautiful, so forgive me, but it takes you to the right links, and it also takes you to the YouTube channel for JPL, where we have a whole playlist of cool 360s. So as I said, I became obsessed with 360s, but that wasn't enough. I wanted to get into the back end. I didn't like working with APIs that I couldn't control. I wanted to work with Unity. I wanted to be like helping 3D developers figure things out. So naturally, I moved to this place at JPL called the Ops Lab, which is kind of like a startup within JPL, where a bunch of developers and designers kind of trying to figure things out, from research and development to flight projects, so actually working with missions. And our goal is to try to change scientists and engineers and their workflow and make it easier to visualize what they're actually doing before they do it or while they're doing it. So we kind of function in this world of user-centered design, software development, and business development strategy. So we do a lot of partnerships and collaborations with bigger industry because we are quite tiny. I mean, not quite tiny, we're 45 people, but every project has about 8 people. So, you know, we're tight. And we work on projects like these, and I'll go through a couple of them with you now. A lot of work with the HoloLens, a lot of augmented reality, and a lot of web partnership alongside that. So we figured out that AR alone isn't a good enough thing to work, especially with scientists and engineers that are working on laptops that are from 1992. So you have to have a web component. It's like, does this work on? And I'm like, oh, don't say a browser that doesn't exist anymore, please. So the first project I'll be talking about is OnSite. And this was actually the first application developed for the Microsoft HoloLens. So this is a collaboration with them. This is an anaglyph. This is how scientists and planetary geologists studying the surface of Mars used to look at data to get 3D perspective on it. I mean, it's cool, you put the glasses on, you get some depth, but it wasn't enough. So we started doing some user research in 2013, basically trying to prove that if you take photogrammetry of Mars really crudely, put it in the first Oculus, put scientists in it, we wanted them to just be like, oh, this is better. And that's exactly what happened. And then enter HoloLens. We started working with the Microsoft team to create automatic kind of visualization of Mars. So through the pipeline that we created, we actually have our scientists and engineers virtually walking on Mars together, as they would on Earth, and exploring the latest Sol or Martian day that the Curiosity rover is on. So we're using Unity to build this up. And the best thing about it is that it is collaborative. So you see these little, I didn't design the avatar, Microsoft did. But you see these avatars, so if you're not in the same location as someone else, you can actually go and kind of virtually meet up on a planet. So we're truly enabling scientists to work on Mars from their offices. And I'll show you a little, oh, I need to get over here. A little video of the reconstruction that we do. So really the magic or the wonderful thing, I shouldn't say magic, that and technology never mix too well, but the wonderful thing about this is that we did create an automatic pipeline. So as data passes through the Deep Space Network, oh no, it's not loading. Oh, there it goes. Ooh, so this is actual Mars, you guys. And it's an integrated mesh, which means that we do make some guesses on some of the polygons. We also have a baseline mesh, which is actually just the raw data from the rover. It looks black and white, it's not this pretty, but it's better for science. So this data gets pulled down, automatically put into our program and onto a HoloLens. So if I had one today and I was like, hey, where's Curiosity? Put on the HoloLens and look at the data that we have. And that's the first time we've really visualized things in that way. Also, touting our wonderful work, there was this dun dun dun, desiccation cracks or mud cracks found on Mars. Doesn't sound fun, does it? But it is, because it's another reason that we found the idea that there was ancient life on Mars because of this ancient water. So these cracks were first seen in on-site. And that was a huge feat for us because it actually connected us to an actually scientific discovery and a real paper, and it validated visualization in this way as a real scientific kind of helper. And although that doesn't sound like a battle that's hard to fight, I think for an agency like NASA, you do have to have these papers published, and it was a really exciting time for us. And these are some visuals of our Meet on Mars sessions. So there are the avatars again. But these are scientists in Europe and in all over the planet, basically, all meeting up where Curiosity is and doing real science. They also kneel. So when you kneel down, they actually kneel. People love it. I don't know why they love that feature so much, but it's like, I don't know. It's great, though. And if you're interested in exploring Mars, we actually collaborated with Google on a product called Access Mars, which basically lets you do the same thing, except from a modern browser. So if you go to accessmars.com, you can check it out. I think it's actually under construction, so you can only do it on a desktop, but that's not my fault. That is Google's fault. They're uploading it to WebXR, so I'm waiting on that. I don't have much time left, so I'm kind of going to breeze through this, so hold on to your hats. So that was the science part of things. The project that I lead is the 3D CAD visualization imagery project. So what that means is taking really complex CAD imagery, and I'm not going to show this video because I don't think we have, well, maybe a little bit. Let's see. Basically, we take CAD engineering models and visualize them in full scale in the room. So another collaborative project that you can look at with another person, but we solve the problems of being like, will my hand fit here when I'm trying to put this thing together in real life? Or will this tool fit with this actual part? So these kind of scale and integration and testing problems that are really hard to catch in a 2D realm, specifically in a CAD file or in a PowerPoint presentation, which is truly how people were doing this before. We're visualizing spacecraft that haven't been built yet in 3D, so we're able to solve problems quite literally before they happen. It's changed the way that a lot of missions are designed. We're working really closely with the Europa Clipper mission. We're actually featured in the documentary on Nat Geo about them as the first thing, like, look at this new technology. So using the HoloLens and a web client, we're basically able to disseminate a model to a way that it will render on a HoloLens and view it and work on it together. So I know that our other companies are doing this as well, but from a small scale, we're doing it in a way that is very specific to an engineer's flow. I know, that was a real reaction, by the way. Alice had never done that before, and she was like, what just happened? It scaled. So we're really trying to cater this to JPLers and NASA agencies, but we're also trying to have a better workflow with outside vendors and other companies as well. So it's a really exciting project. And this one, I'm just gonna breeze through these. This also touches human spaceflight. So we worked with Scott Kelly. We shot a couple HoloLenses into space and worked on remote assist and a procedure with him. So basically taking holograms, putting them over actual hardware, and taking a step-by-step walkthrough on how to do something. So instead of reading a piece of paper on how to do it, you're actually doing it virtually in situ. So we're empowering the crew with assistance where they need it. And we just did a really exciting real test. I won't have time to go through this, but we did a really awesome real test at the Aquarius habitat, which is off Key Largo in Florida. It's the only aquatic habitat in the world. And we had a crew, 2 scientists, 2 astronauts, or aquanauts. Come on, it's real. It's a real word. And 2 hab techs actually doing a 10-day mission underneath the water, doing a moon analog test. And they used protospace to do a procedure. So this was another huge win where we had actual people using these tools in real life, pretending that they were on the moon, but doing them in real life. So it was pretty exciting stuff. And I can talk your ear off about this. And again, we poured everything to the public, so if you're interested in kind of seeing this workflow, you can download Spacecraft AR, which is an AR app where you can see a lot of our flying missions and see them in full scale just from the comfort of your living room, and you can do collaborative sessions as well. It's a really cool party trick, or if you have kids, it's a great way to make them do their homework. I do tutoring, so I'm like, I bet if you do this, I'll show you 3 spacecraft, they're all in my pocket, and they're like, whatever, man. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. And then it's like, mind's blown. They love it. So great party trick. If you don't know what to talk about, just show people robotic spacecraft. So to end, I just want to say kind of, for me, what I figured out in this kind of jam-packed speech that I just gave is the intersectionality of art and science is the ability to work in the design process with both flight missions and transform the way scientists and engineers do their job, but also inspire other humans that are going to be into the scientific content even more because it's going to inspire them. And what I'm trying to do is truly bridge the gap between what happened in history and putting a new and more realistic look on how science, engineering, and art can be combined today by so many interesting people to do more things in the world that are bigger than us. And that's proven in a lot of these little letters I get from the kids I talk to. Just them mentioning the idea that art and science can exist in one place is something that I wished I had when I was little, and I'm so glad to be the person that is trying to say this, and I think in this room we're all trying to say the same thing. But you know, it's not until you see them react that you kind of say, oh my God, they used the words together and it makes sense. One of the kids wrote me a letter and he said, I wanted to be a baseball player and a cop, and you inspired me to be a baseball cop. And I was like, okay, yes, you can do it. I really want to follow this guy's career. It's going to be amazing. I was like, but how? Baseball cop, how? So if you want to get in touch, I am all over the internet, and please feel free to reach out. I like a zero inbox, and I always read all my DMs. Maybe I'm OCD about it. But please reach out and ask questions. And there's that website again if you want to download 360s and our YouTubes that we have for public consumption from JPL. And with that, I want to say thank you again to the Gray Area Festival and all the people that are putting this together. It's been a wonderful experience so far, and I'm so pleased to be able to speak to you. Thank you.